Under the shimmering night sky of a bustling city, the streets were alive with people reveling in the vibrant nightlife. Amidst the commotion, the scene shifted to a lively restaurant where a man sat devouring his meal with reckless abandon. Onlookers began to murmur uneasily, debating whether to intervene. Some speculated he might collapse from overeating, puzzled by the tears streaming down his face as he indulged in the feast. His sheer size and appetite drew comparisons to a festive holiday dinner, leaving the crowd both amazed and bewildered. Among the crowd, a man whispered that this might be some people's first time seeing the individual, though he was quite well known in Henan. Another man chuckled, asking if it was because of the man's appearance. The first man cautioned against judging by looks alone, adding that the others still had much to learn. He explained that while the newcomer might not be local, he surely must have heard of this man, an extraordinary figure renowned for achieving the impossible, uniting all the merchant unions in Henan. The second man, visibly surprised, listened as the first revealed the man's name, Warren of the Sky Ocean Merchant Union, the grand merchant responsible for such an unprecedented feat. Nearby, a woman's voice cut through the murmurs, urging Warren to stop. She pointed out that while most people eat 3 meals a day, he was consuming 3 days' worth of food in one sitting. Frustrated, she tried to pull him from his chair, but her efforts were futile, as he was like an immovable mountain. Some in the crowd marveled at the notion that he was once considered handsome in his youth. The woman, whose name was Yanhwa, warned him that his gluttony would harm him. Tears continued to roll down Warren's cheeks as he responded, his voice heavy with sorrow, that if he stopped eating, the memories of a dreadful day would return to haunt him. Her expression softened, hurt but understanding, as she let go and asked if he truly intended to live the rest of his life like this. Later that night, in the solitude of a carriage ride home, Warren removed his ornate jewelry, his reflection somber. He admitted aloud that all his wealth and riches felt hollow, unable to heal the wound within him. His excessive indulgence in luxury and gluttony was merely a mask for the pain of losing loved ones, a pain that only people could mend. Yet, the nightmares of that fateful day continued to plague him. Beside him, Yanhwa's concern was evident. Warren sighed, reflecting on how many years had passed since he made the Sky Ocean Merchant Union his home. Yet, Yanhwa still called him young master instead of head merchant. Her gaze was warm as she replied that no matter how much time passed, he would always be the young master of the Tianzhong clan in her eyes. Looking at her closely, Warren noticed the faint wrinkles beginning to form on her face. A wave of realization washed over him as he recalled how, even after he left the clan and married into another family, Yanhwa had followed him, remaining steadfast by his side. Yanhwa was more than just a servant to Warren, she was like family to him, and without her, he believed he wouldn't be alive. As he touched the scar on his forehead, Warren confessed that everything fell apart the day the Tianzhong clan met its end. A picture of his family appeared in his mind, and he admitted he had once despised them, especially his father, whom he had hated more than anyone else. Years ago, Warren, in his bitterness, had a statue of himself made and told a young Yanhwa to guide his father to the statue if he ever came looking for him. Despite being the eldest son of a prosperous martial arts clan, Warren had completely turned his back on his family. His resentment ran so deep that he didn't resist when he was essentially sold off in an arranged marriage to the Sky Ocean Merchant Union. Years later, tragedy struck as the Tianzhong clan was attacked by a sect. Watching his clan consumed by flames, Warren realized, too late, that he loved his father deeply despite his earlier hatred. After all, he was still his father. Overcome with grief, Warren grabbed the statue and began headbutting it repeatedly, screaming in anguish. Yanhwa rushed over, begging him to stop before he hurt himself. Warren eventually collapsed to his knees, and Yanhwa comforted him as they both spent the rest of the night watching the clan burn to the ground. In the present, something rapidly approached their carriage. Inside, Warren told Yanhwa that he had decided to change his ways. He promised to mend his relationship with his wife and abandon the reckless lifestyle he had been living. He acknowledged that he had grieved long enough and vowed to take care of the family he still had, though he worried about how cold his wife might be toward him. Laughing lightly, he told Yanhwa that she was like family to him. Yanhwa smiled warmly and promised to continue serving him well. Suddenly, a projectile shot through the side of the carriage, and a man crashed into Yanhwa, sending her flying through the air before bursting out the other side. The carriage toppled over. Meanwhile, the attacker, an old man, managed to regain his footing but slammed into a tree due to his momentum. Coughing up blood, he muttered that his organs were in tatters. A group of masked figures quickly surrounded him. Despite his injuries, the old man fended off an attacker's blade by letting it pierce his hand. The masked figures taunted him, claiming they had warned him there was no escape. The old man spat blood and accused them of betrayal, revealing himself to be the demonic master. Taking advantage of his weakened state, the attackers stabbed him in the stomach, mocking him for his pathetic downfall and blaming his demise on the blood demon castle. Gritting his teeth, the demonic master unleashed a red aura, scattering or disintegrating several of his attackers. Back near the overturned carriage, Warren, lying on the ground and bleeding heavily, raised his head. His blurred vision spotted something moving in the distance. Yanhwa lay lifeless nearby, and Warren, overcome with grief, screamed into the night, his sorrow echoing through the air. Meanwhile, the demonic master staggered forward, leaving a bloody trail behind him. Collapsing to his knees, he muttered that he needed a new body before his heart gave out. Preparing to use the spirit possession technique, he felt blood pouring from his mouth and admitted to himself that this might be the end of his journey. Just then, Warren appeared before him, full of rage, accusing the old man of causing the loss of his family member by dragging them into his battle. He demanded to know why the fight had to happen there. The demonic master didn't respond, and Warren, seething, grabbed him by the collar, yelling for him to at least acknowledge the life lost. The old man mumbled something unintelligible as Warren shook him. Before Warren could act further, the demonic master quickly infused his aura into his fingertips and struck several pressure points on Warren's body, causing him to go stiff and collapse to the ground. Confused, Warren struggled to move, but his body wouldn't respond. As he fought to lift his hand, the demonic master gasped, chiding Warren for treating an injured old man so roughly. Warren, still paralyzed, muttered that he knew the old man was a martial artist but couldn't believe this was how things would end for him. The demonic master sat beside him, admitting that since this was his final chance to use the spirit possession technique, he had hoped to claim a young and talented body to extend his life. But with his moments dwindling, he had no choice but to take what he could. Even if it's the body of a pig, he muttered, I'll make the most of it. He began the ritual, channeling 160 years of martial essence and true ki into his left hand, which he placed on Warren's stomach. Simultaneously, he directed his soul and spirit into his right hand, pressing it against Warren's forehead. The two energies had to be sent in perfect harmony to succeed. After a tense moment, the aura surrounding them faded, and the old man's body went limp. Warren sat up abruptly, pushing the corpse away. Looking down at his hand, he clenched it experimentally before an eerie smile spread across his face. The possession technique had worked. But as soon as he felt victorious, a splitting headache racked his body. The demonic master's voice echoed in his mind, explaining that Warren should already be suppressed by his true ki and spiritual power. The scene shifted to show the demonic master's soul floating behind Warren's body, frustrated as he realized Warren was refusing to yield. I will survive, Warren shouted in defiance. I must avenge my clan. The old man, surprised by Warren's unrelenting willpower, scoffed, claiming it was futile. With an ominous smirk, he began to absorb Warren's soul, inhaling its essence. Warren's spirit started to deteriorate, his consciousness fading as the demonic master gained control. Suddenly, one of the masked attackers appeared behind Warren's body, immediately recognizing that the demonic master had already succeeded in transferring into his new vessel. Countless demonic humans of the three demonic heavens called him their master for a reason, but his reputation ends there as the assassin lunges at him with a sword. The old man mutters, "This is bad," realizing his spirit possession technique is on the verge of completion. The blade pierces through his throat, causing him to cough up blood as a red aura glows around him, followed by an explosion. Meanwhile, Warren's voice echoes, complaining that his head feels like it's splitting apart. The scene shifts, and Warren awakens in an unfamiliar apothecary. Sitting up groggily, he wonders where he is, complaining about the dryness in his throat. Spotting a bowl of medicine nearby, he takes a sip, only to grimace and exclaim, "This tastes awful." Suddenly, he notices his slim hands and screams in panic, dropping the bowl, which shatters on the floor. Stunned, he stares at his hands, horrified by their frail appearance, and mutters, "What the hell is wrong with my hands?" A young girl rushes into the room, alarmed by the noise. Calling his name, she asks if he's okay and mentions hearing something break. To his shock, it's Manhwa, looking much younger. He grabs her, frantically asking how she has become young again. Manhwa, confused, asks if he had a bad dream. Warren tries to convince himself that this must be a dream, but then he feels a sharp pain in his foot. Looking down, he realizes he has stepped on a shard of glass, and the sensation is too real for a dream. His expression turns to confusion as he tries to make sense of the situation. Suddenly, an idea strikes him. Without a word, he gets up and heads outside, ignoring Manhwa's protests that he shouldn't be moving around with his injured foot. Warren stops in front of a statue and stares at it in disbelief. "Why is this here?" he mutters, his voice shaking. He remembers destroying it after that fateful day and can't fathom its presence now. His hands tremble as he reaches out to touch the statue. Overwhelmed with emotion, he calls out to Manhwa, who sees him trembling and crying. Concerned, she asks when he had the statue placed there. She then explains that it's only been around for 5 days. Hearing this, Warren's expression shifts, and he says with determination, "There's still time." Manhwa watches in confusion as Warren grips the statue tightly and, with an anguished cry, slams his head into it. The statue cracks on impact, and with one final blow, it shatters completely, reduced to rubble by Warren's sheer will and strength. He stands there, blood dripping from his forehead, breathing heavily as the weight of his emotions consumes him. Manhwa screams, calling out to Warren in a panic, asking if he's okay, but Warren doesn't respond. Instead, he stands amidst the shattered remains of his statue, the realization dawning on him that this is no dream. Somehow, he has been sent back to the past. He looks at the pieces of the broken statue, his mind racing, and quickly understands he's 3 years before the day his clan falls. For him, this is more than enough time. Determined, Warren declares aloud that he will protect his people and the Tianzhong clan at all costs. The narrative shifts to provide some background on the Tianzhong clan, a martial arts family residing near Tianzhong Mountain in Henan. Many years ago, several households named themselves after the mountain, but it was the Yong clan that unified them, earning the title of the Tianzhong clan. In its glory days, the clan was widely praised, its name synonymous with strength and prestige. However, over time, its reputation faded, and the clan became a shadow of its former self, no longer receiving the admiration it once had. We see Warren's father, Yong, sighing deeply as he sets down his teacup. He laments that it has already been 30 years, and yet no new expert martial artists have risen within the clan since Elder Yong Gosang, the supreme dragon of Henan. Sitting across from him, his wife listens as Yong expresses his sadness over the clan's decline. He admits that it's disheartening to see their family's legacy reduced to mere whispers of what it once was. She reassures him that they can still hope for Warren to recover and lead them toward a brighter future. However, Yong shakes his head, saying that she knows as well as he does how much Warren resents him. Yong explains that he had tried to be considerate, but perhaps it was his fault for remarrying too soon after his first wife's death, leaving his son feeling abandoned. His wife smiles gently, advising him to be patient, believing that Warren just needs more time. Yong, however, feels the gap between them growing wider rather than healing. He recalls visiting Warren 5 days earlier, only to find a statue in the garden. Warren had told him to pretend the statue was him instead. Sighing, Yong apologizes, admitting he might be venting too much. At that moment, Manhwa bursts into the courtyard, shouting frantically. Yong, alarmed, asks what's wrong and why she's so upset. Gasping for breath, Manhwa tries to speak but starts crying uncontrollably. Yong gently urges her to calm down and explain. Between sobs, she tells him that Warren has hurt himself and is now unconscious. Both Yong and his wife are stunned by the news. The scene shifts to Warren lying in bed, drenched in sweat, as though trapped in a terrible nightmare. In his dream, he's beneath a waterfall, watching koi fish swim around. His mother sits beside him, smiling warmly. Young Warren laughs, saying he's caught a big one and urging her to look. But when he turns, he finds her slumped over on the rocks. Dropping the fish, he runs to her in panic. The memory shifts to her lying in bed, pale and sickly, as Warren cries at her side. She calls him closer and apologizes for not being able to take him to the waterfall anymore. Hugging her tightly, he sobs while she gently consoles him, urging him to stop crying. Suddenly, the dream warps into a nightmare. the demonic master appears, grabbing Waren's head and mocking him for his tears. Calling him weak, the master declares he'll take Waren's head as a prize. The vision turns terrifying, and Waren screams as he jolts awake, his heart pounding. Waren awakes in his bed and looks around, immediately struck by a sense of familiarity mixed with strangeness. The room is undoubtedly his childhood bedroom, but it feels foreign after so many years. The realization sets in, he truly is back in the past. Overwhelmed by the weight of his memories, he reflects on the hatred he once harbored for his father and how he had isolated himself from his family. He recalls the tragic chain of events that began with his father's brutal murder and ended with the complete collapse of the Tianzhong clan. Regret seeps into his thoughts as he wonders if, with his knowledge of the future, he might prevent the devastation and protect the clan this time. Suddenly, a strange sensation disrupts his thoughts, a surging energy within his abdomen. He feels the heat intensifying, confused and alarmed by this unfamiliar force. Meanwhile, outside his room, two women gossip about him. One scoffs at the idea that Waren destroyed the statue by headbutting it, pointing out his long-standing frailty and lack of martial arts training. The other insists she saw it happen with her own eyes and speculates that he might be possessed. Before they can continue, the door slams open, and Waren steps out, trembling. The women immediately start stammering excuses for their gossip, but Waren pays them no mind. His focus is entirely on his body, which feels unnaturally hot, the heat radiating from his lower dantian. Panic sets in as he realizes the old man's energy has manifested, creating an overwhelming surge of Yang energy. If he doesn't find a way to control it, he fears he'll do something he'll regret. Without hesitation, he dashes into the forest, muttering to himself about the dire need to manage the energy. As he runs, his body feels as though it might explode from the intensity of the heat. Finally, he leaps into the cold waters of a waterfall, the same one from his dream, letting the freezing water cool his overheated body. Steam rises from him as he emerges, and he lets out a long, relieved sigh, feeling momentarily saved. Just as he begins to regain his composure, he hears a voice calling his name. Startled, he looks up to see his father, Yong, rushing toward him. To his shock, Yong leaps into the freezing water and grabs him, tears streaming down his face. Yong accuses him of trying to take his own life on such a cold day, his voice filled with desperation and sorrow. Waren is overcome with emotion at the sight of his father alive, but he holds himself back from acting too affectionately, knowing it would seem odd given their strained history. However, his emotions get the better of him, and he embraces his father tightly, unable to stop himself from crying. In his heart, he feels a profound gratitude for this second chance. Whether this is a dream or reality, he vows never to lose his family again. 3 months pass, and Waren's relationship with his family begins to heal. One day, he goes fishing with his younger half-brother, Kajung, a boy he barely spoke to in his past life. Kajung laughs as he shows off his fuller basket of fish, teasing Waren that he'll win their bet. Waren reflects on how he neglected Kajung before, even as the boy struggled with chi blockage after training in the clan's martial arts technique. In his previous life, the blockage left Kajung bedridden and unable to train, which contributed to the clan's decline. At the time, Waren was too absorbed in his responsibilities as a son-in-law of the Sky Ocean Merchant Union to intervene. Now, he regrets how his indifference added to Kajung's burdens. During their fishing trip, Kajung hesitates and asks if it's really okay for him to stop taking the medicines prescribed to him. Waren laughs, joking that the medicines would only make him fat. When Kajung protests that he doesn't remember him ever being fat, Waren corrects himself, saying the medicines might eventually lead to it. Kajung chuckles, saying he likes the new Waren, especially since he's been giving him allowances under the guise of bets. When Kajung shows him his superior catch, Waren dramatically throws his own fish into the air, declaring he won't lose again. The brothers laugh, and Waren grabs Kajung, joking that he's caught the biggest fish yet before pulling him into the water. As they play, Waren silently apologizes to Kajung, vowing to protect him from the burdens that once crushed him. Meanwhile, Waren has been tirelessly preparing for martial arts training by strengthening his body. He meditates daily under the waterfall to stabilize the old man's energy, which hasn't caused further issues since its initial surge. One morning, as he finishes his meditation, he notices his younger half-sister, Xiaolin, standing nearby with a towel. She cheerfully hands it to him, saying she feels like they're finally growing closer. Warren, guilt-stricken, recalls how cruelly he treated her in his previous life despite her kind nature. Sealan had always tried to connect with him, often inviting him to events like fireworks festivals. Each time, he had snapped at her, telling her he had no time for such trivialities and leaving her in tears. The last time she invited him was the final interaction they ever had. On her way to the festival, she was murdered, and Beyond, devastated, launched a personal investigation. Not long after, Beyond was assassinated as well. Warren's heart aches as he looks at Sealan, vowing to never treat her coldly again. This time, he will protect her, Kajong, and everyone else he lost. He recalled the past events tied to Sealan's invitations to attend 2 festivals, the Moon Festival happening today and the Yong Clan Festival scheduled a year later. Tragically, it was during that future festival that Sealan met her untimely death. Determined to rewrite history, Warren asked if today was the Moon Festival, and Sealan, her eyes sparkling with excitement, eagerly confirmed. She asked if he truly wanted to go with her, a hint of disbelief in her tone, and he assured her he did, even suggesting they shop together before the event. Her joy was palpable, and Warren silently resolved not to let this precious opportunity slip through his fingers again. He was determined to protect his family, rewrite the fate of his loved ones, and restore the Tianzhong clan's former glory, no matter the cost. Later that day, Warren joined the other disciples for training at the estate. This was a stark contrast to his former self, who had spent his days confined indoors, swallowing bitter medicines and immersing himself in books, refusing to engage with the outside world. Reflecting on how drastically his life had shifted, he acknowledged that the ominous energy from the old man's spirit, which once terrified him, now served as an unyielding force driving him forward. While he still didn't fully understand the nature of the energy, it compelled him to test his limits and push his body beyond its former fragility. As Warren practiced, his father, Beyond, noticed him and called out. Watching his son with a mix of awe and emotion, Beyond tearfully remarked how much Warren had changed, proudly acknowledging his growth. Embarrassed by the public display, Warren tried to dismiss it, reminding his father that the other disciples were watching. Laughing, Beyond waved off his concerns and suggested they take his training to the next level. He offered to arrange for a formal martial arts instructor to teach Warren, who, to Beyond's surprise, revealed he already had someone in mind. Before they could delve deeper, Sealan entered the scene, running up to Warren and throwing her arms around him. She gleefully showed off her new clothes, twirling and asking for his opinion. Her cheerful energy lit up the courtyard as she declared that her brother had picked out the outfit, and she thought it was beautiful. Beyond sighed but admitted she looked lovely, and Sealan laughed, expressing her love for him. Watching the interaction, Warren reflected that having a strong body alone wouldn't be enough, he needed the skills and strength to truly protect his loved ones. Determined to grow stronger, Warren sought out Beyond, the dragon flower sword, renowned for her exceptional martial prowess. In the courtyard, he found her practicing with an unmatched grace, her movements fluid and precise, as if dancing with the wind. Her reputation was not widely known, but Warren, with his knowledge of the future, understood the true extent of her strength. Gathering his courage, he approached her, bowing deeply and asking to become her disciple. Surprised by the request, Beyond remarked on the rumors of his recovery, admitting he seemed different, but she doubted that anyone could change so quickly. She flatly refused, explaining that her focus was on uncovering why the Tianzhong clan's secret arts had stagnated. Her rejection stung, but Warren refused to give up. As she turned to leave, Warren, driven by desperation, dropped to his knees, shocking Beyond. She questioned his actions, finding it absurd that the eldest son of the Tianzhong clan would kneel over what she considered an insignificant matter. However, Warren's voice, filled with conviction, told a different story. He passionately declared that her contributions to the clan were far from insignificant. Drawing from his knowledge of the future, he recounted her pivotal role in the battle against the D sect, where she earned the title Dragon Blood Flower for her bravery. Though the title was not flattering, she had given everything to rebuild the clan, only to meet a mysterious and tragic end. Warren vowed to prevent her death and the downfall of the clan, his voice trembling with emotion. Intrigued by his words and apparent sincerity, Beyond decided to give him a chance, though she imposed a daunting condition: he must land a single hit on her in a sparring match. Confident in her abilities, she further handicapped herself, stating she wouldn't use chi or the clan's martial techniques. Despite his determination, the match proved disastrous for Warren. Byung effortlessly disarmed and knocked him down repeatedly, her skill far beyond his reach. Still, Warren refused to surrender, his resolve burning as fiercely as ever. Even as he collapsed to the ground, battered and seemingly unconscious, his hand never let go of his sword. This stubborn tenacity earned Byung's respect. As she turned to leave, acknowledging his effort, a faint red aura began to emanate from Warren's body. It darkened ominously, signaling the latent power within him stirring, and hinting at the immense challenges he would face on his path to change his family's fate. She feels it turning back, seeing Warren standing once more, the red aura swirling around him. She instinctively grabs her blade, telling him to return to his senses. But before she can finish speaking, he has already closed the gap, right in front of her. She manages to swing her sword, knocking his away, but nervously sweats, saying he's actually very fast. Warren leaps again, attacking from above, but this time he lands a hit, sending her crashing into the wall. She now realizes she's been cornered. As he comes in for another attack, she sees it and knows it's too dangerous. She has no choice but to counter it. Drawing her blade, she uses the first form of the Soaring Dragon Emperor's sword to block. However, to her surprise, Warren stops just before hitting her face, leaving her completely confused. Warren starts laughing, saying that he touched her, which was part of their agreement, and then calls her master before collapsing to the ground, unconscious. She looks behind her at the wall and sees that he actually carved a chunk out of it, wondering what on earth just happened. Sometime later, we see them training in the courtyard. Warren swings his sword, and the air around him feels different now. He follows up with a diagonal cut and then soars through the air, landing gracefully, just as she had demonstrated during her own training. She wonders if he always had this much talent. He learned both the Soaring Dragon Emperor's sword and the Azure Bamboo sword forms in just a few days. She remarks that he didn't seem to have any martial talent before and asks if he's really that exhausted. He laughs and says he hasn't awakened to the full potential yet, but he can use the two sword styles without trouble. Considering how little he is trained, it's pretty impressive. He laughs again, saying she praises him too much. Still, she seems to be suspicious, constantly recalling the ominous red aura. She tells him he's learning martial arts at an unbelievable speed and that it's hard to believe he was bedridden with illness not long ago. Sensing a follow-up, he sighs and says she probably wants to ask about the red key again. He asks if he really needs to explain it once more, explaining he doesn't remember anything after receiving so many of her blows. Showing her a bump on his head, he says only she would treat the eldest son of the clan this way. She decides to drop the subject, saying since he doesn't want to talk about it, she won't press further. However, as a member of the Tianzhong clan, she feels responsible for him and will watch over every moment of his life. He tells her that sounds a bit scary. That night, while Warren is in his room, he feels something strange. After practicing the sword techniques he learned, he realizes that the Tianzhong clan's martial arts are incomplete. This is inevitable, as the clan's art originally came from a demonic sect. The founder of the Tianzhong clan was a wandering martial artist seeking justice in Henan. He learned two demonic arts from the hidden saint cult, which was neither an orthodox nor a demonic sect. Despite learning these arts, the founder reinvented them over time to form the two sword techniques used today. While their power was reduced, it was still enough to make him the greatest swordsman in Henan. But since the martial arts came from a demonic origin, they were incomplete when combined with orthodox cultivation methods. Reaching the peak of these techniques was impossible, and the founder kept the origins of the arts a secret. After many years, this truth finally surfaced, leading to the downfall of the clan. Clenching his fists in anger, Warren declares that things will be different now. He has a way to complete the martial art, something only he can do because he has seen the future. Later, Warren talks to his father and stepmother, telling them that he plans to visit the clan. Byung asks what business he has there, and Warren explains that he recovered his health by learning martial arts and believes it would be good to visit them, especially since they have an arranged marriage. Byung comments that time flies and that the marriage was arranged before Warren was even born. He begins to mention the daughter's name, but Warren interrupts, saying her name is Jel Changyang. His father smiles, agreeing, and says he was good friends with her father, Yugel. He's heard that Chang-yang is incredibly beautiful and asks when Warren plans to leave. His stepmother suggests that since Warren has just recovered, it might be better for him to take more time to rest. Warren laughs, saying that he's of age now, and meeting people through travel is an important part of life. He adds that his father was around his age when he met Yugal. His stepmother agrees but warns him to be very cautious about his health and safety, as the trip will be long and take over a month. She insists that he needs a dependable bodyguard. Just then, we see Bayan looking furious. Warren is happy to see her but asks who the two men behind her are as they step forward. The men begin to approach and grab her by the arms, leaving Warren wondering what's going on. The men smile and comment that he's in much better shape now, clearly training his body, and that he's very different from before. Warren guesses that they must be the Rising Ghost Blades and says it's nice to meet them. The men confirm they're here to protect him and add that Warren has the potential to bulk up and gain muscle. The two muscle-headed brothers are introduced as Jungwook and Wook. Warren says that although they may seem like muscle-heads, they're skilled enough with swords to be called the Ghostblade Blades. He comments that his father must have put a lot of thought into choosing his guards. Warren immediately tells them that he will decide the path they take on the journey and hopes they will follow his lead without question. Jungwook stares at him for a moment before agreeing with a smile. Warren says they should leave immediately, as everyone else is ready. Warren bids farewell to his family, and Xiaolan wipes away her tears, asking if he really has to go. He apologizes and promises that he will go wherever she wants during the central festival. She asks if he's serious, and he smiles, saying of course. Both Bang and his stepmother watch him proudly. Warren then calls out to Kajung, asking him to look after Xiaolan and the family while he's gone. Kajung wonders if his brother has always been so tall and promises to protect them with his life as he salutes him. Warren takes a few steps back, telling them he's ready to leave. We see his father and the family respectfully bidding him farewell as he heads out with his guards. Just as he begins to leave, a familiar voice calls out to him. When he turns, he sees Yanoa running toward him. Warren immediately recalls the time when the clan was already failing, and he was leaving in a carriage. Yanoa had chased after him, calling his name and begging to go with him. It feels just like what is happening now, and Warren can hardly believe she's chasing after him again. He starts to think about it, but Jungwook advises him to refuse her, saying it's too dangerous for a servant girl to join them. He tells them to wait a minute. Getting off the horse, he runs toward her. He apologizes, closing her eyes, thinking she might get slapped. She is instead shocked when he hugs her tightly. The rest of the party watches the drama unfold. Warren tells Yanoa that she always wishes to be by his side. For that, he is forever grateful. He explains, however, that the path he is taking could be extremely far and dangerous. As of now, he is unable to protect her if she went with him. He doesn't want to bring her harm since she is his beloved family. With a smile, he tells her that she has to stay with the family. Yanoa cries as she agrees to his terms. Warren, with a determined look, leaves the clan. He thinks to himself that when he returns to the Tianzhong clan, a lot will have changed. He swears to protect his family and prevent the fall of their clan. As they continue their journey, he apologizes to his father because going to the Jaegal clan is just an excuse. It is not far from the Wudong clan, where the secret to perfecting the incomplete martial arts of their clan lies. They will be heading to Wudong as their journey continues. Warren, looking up at the sky, suddenly finds himself in a giant body of water. As he walks around endlessly, he says, "This place is way too vast." He then feels something in the water behind him. When he turns around, it's none other than a signboard. When he picks it up, he sees that it's actually the Tianzhong clan's board. When he looks back up, what was a giant endless sea is now an ocean of flames. He sees the clan house on fire, looks at it in disbelief, and starts screaming, "No," while running around. The demonic master appears, calling him a fool. Warren falls to the ground, screaming. The master says that after receiving the greatest possible opportunity that goes against the heavens themselves, Warren is going to waste his time on such childish endeavors. Warren asks how he's here, and the old man tells him that he cannot change anything. Gazing at him as if he were peering into his soul, the master demands he hand over his body. But just then, a sword cuts through the apparition of the old man, snapping Warren back to reality. Bang asks what he's busy daydreaming about. Warren then sees her flying straight at him, knocking his sword out of his hands, sending it backward, and putting her sword right up to his neck. He tells her that he surrenders. She says he's unable to keep his focus and asks if he's feeling unwell. He says it's not that, his sleep has just been really bad for the last few days. We then hear Jungwook say, if he doesn't feel well, how about he trains with us? We see the boys hitting both the squat and the bench press. They say these are the best things for increasing one's strength and that he can utilize his muscles very efficiently with this. Warren sweats nervously and walks away, saying, maybe next time. More importantly, I have something to announce regarding the trip. As they roll back on the road, he says that before they head to the Jaegal clan, he wishes to stop by Mount Seven Sages. Jungwook asks why, and Warren explains that he's read a book written by a renowned herbalist, and it says there's a part of Mount Seven Sages where 100-year-old ginseng can be found. It is also said that there is monkey wine, which is rare and hard to find elsewhere in the world. Both of the brothers start drooling at the thought of the wine. Warren says he heard that they love alcohol so much that people call them the two rising drunken ghosts. They immediately agree with him and support his decision. However, Byung shouts at them, warning that Mount Seven Sages is near the demonic sect, and their presence could cause trouble with the orthodox sect. Warren asks how people will know they're from the Tianzhong clan. If they get caught, they can just say they're from another clan. She says that would be disrespectful because it concerns the pride of the clan. He asks her if that's really so important. If they were to encounter a great evil and someone asks where he's from, he won't hesitate to say he's from a demonic sect, as survival matters more than pride. Jungwook asks why they should fear the demonic sect in the first place. He tells Byung that he agrees with Warren, and she asks if they're serious or just interested in the monkey wine. It turns out Jungwook has already become excited, like a monkey, at the thought of the wine. Warren then says that he wants to bring something back for his parents, as he's caused them so much trouble up until now. Byung believes his acting and says that if he really wants to go, they can. He thanks everyone and suggests they make proper preparations. At a nearby inn, he smiles and says that, of course, he lied about the monkey wine. There isn't any on the mountain. Instead, there's something much more valuable, the demonic poison stoneflower. This flower grows from a rare and dangerous crystal created by centuries of poisonous insects gathering in a certain tomb when it's their time to die. The poison from these insects forms a puddle that hardens into a crystal. Occasionally, a seed falls onto the crystal, sprouting into a flower filled with poison and demonic energy. This is the demonic poison stoneflower, and it should be found on Mount Seven Sages. However, as soon as they arrive at the inn, Warren overhears people talking about how many demonic sects are gathering near the mountain, all hoping to find the demonic poison stoneflower. He wonders how the whole world knows about it. Byung then starts sipping her tea and explains that there are many powerful demonic masters at the mountain, which doesn't sound like a good situation to be in. Warren agrees, acknowledging that there will definitely be a fight over the flower, but he doesn't need to get involved. His goal is to defeat Gochiok, the heir to the Serpent Dragon sect, who will be the last one standing and claim the flower. Gochiok has reached the peak level from being a first-rate in just half a year, and the flower will be a perfect ingredient for his martial arts. Since the Tianzhong clan's techniques are based on demonic arts, the flower will be useful for him as well. Warren finishes his drink in one gulp and slams the glass down on the table. He says nothing has changed, and they will still be heading to Mount Seven Sages. Byung stands up in disbelief and asks if he didn't hear the talk about the demonic sect. He replies that the mountain is one of the paths to the Jaegal clan, and the Jaegal clan will certainly be involved, so meeting them might not be a bad idea. Warren sighs and leans over the table, telling Byung that while she may be okay with this plan, if they face powerful martial artists, they won't be able to handle it and will have to run. He then asks about the two goofballs. When they turn around, they see the two brothers lying on the floor, passed out from drinking too much. Warren shakes his head and shrugs, reassuring her that he won't go near any places where dangerous martial artists might be. Byung seems suspicious but reluctantly agrees. They head to a new location where they'll stay for the time being. Warren says that the area around Mount Seven Sages is essentially like the Gallery of Pandemonium. Although he's too weak to enter such a place, he believes the true winner is the one who laughs last. We then get a flashback to Warren telling the group that they should check inns and bars run by the Serpent Dragon sect. They should look for places with few customers but many horses, as Gochiak, the young sect leader, will need a large number of horses to move quickly. If he finds a stable, it means Gochiak and his men are likely to stop there, even if Gochiak has obtained the demonic poison stoneflower. The flower will not be taken immediately, instead, it will be kept in a sect-run inn before being transported to a safer location. Warren explains that the only inn that fits these conditions is the one they are currently staying at. If they stay there, Gochiak will eventually show up with the flower. Later, we see a large group gathered, and Warren watches from above. He asks what they're looking at, and Jungwook replies that the young master of the Serpent Dragon sect is down there. It's none other than Gochiak, the person Warren has been waiting for. Warren is surprised and wonders why Gochiak is here instead of at Mount Seven Sages. He wonders if Gochiak is not actually fighting for the flower. One of Gochiak's men runs up to him and whispers something in his ear. Warren says that he can't make out what they're saying from this distance. Gochiak's expression changes as he hears the news. He looks angry and starts shouting at everyone to gather the swordsmen from their clan because they are going to chase them. Jungwook comments that if Gochiak is calling out the 8 swords and the 8 slashers of the Serpent Dragon sect, then this is big news. Warren thinks that if something urgent just happened, it could create an opportunity to steal the flower, giving him a higher chance of getting it himself. He tells Jungwook to get ready because they're going to follow the group. Byung starts yelling, asking why he wants to chase after a demonic sect, saying it's too dangerous. She's really worried and asks why he keeps getting involved in more risky situations. Warren tells her that Janghu is about to go through a big change, and to survive in the chaos, they need to get stronger. He says that power is just a tool for them. Byung responds that Janghu is peaceful right now, and they're not weak enough to need some herb to become strong. Warren disagrees and tells her that they are weak and can't easily claim what they want without this power. He has a dream, and he's going to get the flower no matter what, so he can protect his family from outside threats. He says that if she believes in him as the heir of the clan, she needs to follow his orders. Byung is taken aback by his sudden change in attitude, and she wonders if it's her fault for not seeing him as an adult until now. Jungwook laughs, saying he didn't know Warren had such courage. He and his brother show their respect and say they will follow his orders. Byung, seeing this, also agrees to follow him. She adds that he needs to remember that Janghu isn't a place to take lightly. Warren nods, agreeing, and tells her not to worry too much. He says that no one knows that better than he does, since he's been through it all. They then prepare to leave town and head to a different area. As they sneakily follow the Serpent Dragon sect members, Warren says he never expected there to be so many of them. The sect members start to form a formation, and Byung tries to tell Warren about it. He stops her, saying that it looks like Gochiak and the others are setting up an inescapable net. Jungwook becomes worried, saying that means they should probably move quickly. Warren reassures him, saying the main group hasn't done anything yet. He's certain they're waiting to take action once they spot anyone suspicious or the person with the miracle medicine. So, they should wait for the right moment. They listen carefully, hearing shouting in the distance about finding the person. This gives them a chance to sneak away a little further. Warren suggests they move towards the river since, now that the person with the medicine has been found, a person on the run would likely choose to go toward the water rather than the woods. Namwook asks why, and Warren explains that a person escaping would prefer water. After a while, all they hear is the eerie silence of the river. They notice it too. Warren tells them to stay as quiet as possible from now on, and Byung audibly gulps in fear. Suddenly, a man walks through the river, screaming for help. He is covered in blood and getting closer to them. Then, a giant purple hand emerges out of nowhere, crushing the man like a bug. This alarms the group, as a powerful purple aura immediately spreads through the area. An old man appears, taking a long breath while holding the flower they've been searching for. Byung wonders if this is the flying demon bloodlion, and Warren asks if she knows who he is, sensing the ominous aura. Jungwook is surprised, saying Warren doesn't know who he is, adding that if you were to pick 100 experts in the demonic martial scene, the Blood Lion would definitely be one of them. Warren notes that the man doesn't seem to be in a good mood and spots the flower in his hand. Warren realizes that if the Blood Lion has the flower now, it's about time for the Serpent Dragon sect to make their move. They quickly pull back from the Blood Lion, thinking they had the upper hand. Gochiak then says that he ran all the way here after killing the most elite members of his sect. He doesn't expect much from the flying demon Blood Lion. The Blood Lion laughs, saying he didn't expect weaklings to try to corner him. If it weren't for the Tang clan, he would have torn them all apart. Gochiak reaches into his robe and asks the Blood Lion if he recognizes this. He pulls out a strange box, and the Blood Lion immediately recognizes it as the Thousand Needle Dart. He asks how Gochiak has it. Gochiak says he spent a lot of money to get it and reveals that not only does he have one, but everyone in his clan surrounding the Blood Lion also has one. They all point them at him. The Blood Lion gets angry, asking if they really think such inferior weapons can hurt him. He begins releasing his aura. At the same time, the group fires the darts, sending a volley of needles flying through the air, almost like fireworks. As they fall toward the Blood Lion, he brings his hands together, and two giant purple hands form above him, clapping together. The shockwave from the clapping knocks many of the needles away. Warren stops and wonders if this is what he thinks it is. The Blood Lion starts to rise into the air, releasing even more aura than before. Gochiak is stunned and asks how this makes sense. The Blood Lion starts to laugh as he begins to flee, saying they are no match for him. Gochiak grins, saying he's ready for the challenge. He orders the second squad to shoot, but the needles are already flying toward the Blood Lion. Gochiak is too late to react, and he gets caught in the explosion, causing him to fall into the water. The group surrounds him, and Gochiak shouts, ordering the 8 swords to surround the Blood Lion and take the flower immediately. The group charges at the Blood Lion from above, but he laughs, saying they will never find the medicine and that he'll take them all down to hell with him. A fierce and brutal battle begins, and the Blood Lion easily takes down many of them, even mocking one fighter who thought he was getting ahead of himself. Byong and the others watch in disgust, with Byong saying she's never seen such a bloodbath before. She asks Warren, who is calm despite the chaos, how he can stay so composed, considering this is likely his first experience in Jianghu. Meanwhile, some of the sect members shout that they've caught the Blood Lion. He is now riddled with arrows and blades, collapsing into the river and taking his last breath. Gochiak tells his men to search him for the medicine, but when they do, they report that it's not there. Gochiak begins to panic, insisting they need to search again, as they saw the Blood Lion holding the medicine. There's no way he could have hidden it, and they must find it. Warren tells the group to follow him as they move through the trees. He calmly explains that the miracle medicine isn't actually on the Blood Lion, but he has a hunch about where it might be. Byang asks if he's sure, since they clearly saw the Blood Lion holding it. Warren explains that the Blood Lion probably sent it down the river. He mentions the water barrier the Blood Lion created earlier was not just for defense, but to block their sight while he secretly pushed the flower into the river using his martial arts. If that's true, the flower would still be there, and they could follow the water to find it. They hear shouting behind them, and Warren tells them to hurry. It won't be long before others figure out where the medicine is too. They spot the purple aura of the flower in the river, and Warren immediately runs over, pulling it out of the water. He asks everyone to wait and takes out a vial, handing the box to Jungwook. He pours something from the vial onto a different flower. Byang asks if they think this is what she believes it is, and Warren confirms that it's poison. She warns him that it's not good for an orthodox martial artist to carry poison, but Warren assures her it's a useful tool. By poisoning the fake flower, they will trick the others into thinking it's the real one. It won't fool them for long, but it will buy them enough time to escape. Jungwook laughs, saying it was easy. While everyone else was fighting for their lives, they managed to get the flower just by sneaking around. Warren shrugs, saying they were just lucky, and it's time to go. But just then, the box is ripped from his hands. A man lands next to him, and the group freezes, not sensing his presence before. Warren turns to look at the man, who grins and says, "It's mine now." At that moment, none of the 4 realized the old man's presence. By the time they noticed him, he was already standing beside Warren. The other three, alarmed, shouted his name, fear rising within them as they recognized the man before them, the flying demonic blood lion. His presence here was far from ordinary. Before Hen could react, the old man struck him with a powerful punch to the stomach. The blow sent Hen flying backward into the forest, leaving a deep crack in the ground as he landed. The remaining three were frozen in fear, silently calling Hen's name, deeply worried for him. The old man's entire body radiated a purple aura. His face twisted with fury as he accused them of being thieves who didn't know their place. He then raised the flower to his mouth and bit into it. His terrifying expression grew darker, and the purple aura around him thickened. He declared that he had planned to take his time absorbing the flower's power, but since they had forced him to act, he would tear apart every human present and replenish his chi with their blood. The storm-like energy surged violently, spreading outward as the aura enveloped him entirely, seemingly absorbing the flower's power. Byong stood frozen, her body stiff, her trembling hand gripping her sword as she faced the old man's overwhelming power. In her mind, she realized this was the first time she was fighting someone so much stronger. Fear filled her eyes as gruesome memories of the old man's past massacres replayed in her mind. Her body felt like it was sinking into darkness, and her instincts screamed that she was truly going to die this time. Fortunately, the voice of the young men beside her pulled her back to reality. One of them remarked that he had never thought before acting, which was how he had earned the title of Ghostblade. The two men stepped forward, trying to shield Byong despite her desperate attempts to stop them. Unable to speak with certainty, they introduced themselves as the two rising Ghostblades, Jungwook and Namwook. Smiling, they declared that as warriors of the Tianzhong clan, they would protect the young leader and defeat the flying demonic blood lion. Byong, overwhelmed with worry, urgently warned them that the old man was too powerful and that they would die if they fought him. However, the young man cut her off, saying, "Do what needs to be done, Dragonflower Sword." He then turned with a faint smile, reminding her that the old man had just consumed poison. Byong's eyes widened in surprise as she remembered that the young clan leader had replaced the flower with a poison one. Jungwook added that not only was the old man severely wounded, but he had also used his life energy as true ki and poisoned himself. If they could stall him, they might have a chance. Jungwook and Namwook sprang into action, splitting into two directions to attack the old man. They told Byong they would launch the first assault, and in the next instant, both charged at the old man from opposite sides. The old man's eyes turned completely white, and blood vessels bulged across his face as he sneered. "I must applaud you for not running." His aura-covered arm blocked both swords directly, and when they made contact, the swords shattered into pieces. His arm then elongated, aiming to strike both men. Caught off guard, the two could do nothing but brace for the attack. In that critical moment, a golden light erupted like a shield, intercepting the old man's strike. It was Byong, wielding a technique called Soaring Dragon Emperor Sword, followed by Heavenly Lightning Ascension. The lightning surrounded her blade and pierced through the old man's left arm. Despite her attack, fear remained on Byong's face. The old man roared in anger, his attention now entirely focused on her. Just as he prepared to retaliate, he suddenly felt something amiss within his body. Abruptly halting his assault, he retreated. At this point, the two men had managed to create a safe distance, but the old man suddenly coughed up blood, glancing at the crimson smear on his palm. He realized that he had been poisoned internally. He wondered if that old woman from the Tang clan had managed to poison him, but quickly dismissed the thought, reasoning that the Tang clan's poison would have already dissolved his organs. The old man shifted his gaze toward Byong's group and concluded that this poison could only be their doing. Fury surged through him as he clenched his teeth and roared in anger, realizing he had been outsmarted. He declared that he would crush their bones into dust. The old man erupted in a violent coughing fit due to the poison coursing through his veins. Meanwhile, Byong and her two companions remained alert. She recalled Ghostblade's words and thought to herself that the old man was nearing his limit. If they could stall him a little longer, they might actually be able to defeat him. However, the old man's sudden maniacal laughter stunned her. He clutched his face, laughing like a lunatic, only to abruptly stop. His expression twisted with rage as he growled in a chilling tone, questioning if he would really meet his end, not at the hands of the Tang clan's old woman or the weaklings of the Serpent Dragon sect, but by the hands of these nameless nobodies. His eyes burned with hatred as he refused to accept this fate. Then, a terrifying realization hit him. The one he had sent flying earlier must have the demonic poison stoneflower. His aura grew even more threatening as his body radiated uncontrollable fury. He declared that if Hen had it, he would take it, even if Hen had already consumed it. He would tear open his stomach and drink its contents. The old man surged forward with a burst of power. Before Byung's group could react, he appeared in front of them, striking Namlook with such force that he was sent flying. Seeing an opening, Byung launched a counterattack, slashing at the old man. To her shock, his body transformed into a strange, unrecognizable form, making her attack useless. The old man then turned his attention to Jungwook, delivering a crushing blow to his face and sending him sprawling. With only Byung left standing, the old man's eyes burned with demonic intensity as he reached for her face. His speed was so overwhelming that she couldn't dodge. Just as his hand was about to grasp her, a blade of sword energy sliced through the air from the distant forest, severing the old man's arm and saving Byung. It was Warren, arriving at an unimaginable speed. His eyes glowed with instability, his demeanor hinting at a loss of control. Earlier, when Warren had been sent flying into the forest by the old man, he had suffered serious injuries. His body was cracked and bleeding, and he had coughed up blood while lying there. He thought grimly to himself, realizing that the flying demonic blood lion had used his life essence as true key to chase him. Warren knew he had to stand and move, but his body refused to obey. Memories of his promises to his companions flashed in his mind as he stared at the sky. He blamed himself for acting as though he knew everything, only to face such bitter failure. Suddenly, Warren noticed something strange. As he touched the blood on his forehead, he realized that the blood on his body seemed to be alive. A sinister energy emanated from the blood, forming a twisted humanoid shape that seemed to beckon Warren to surrender his body. Gradually, Warren became aware of the mystery inside him. Inside my body is the energy of that old man I saw before he regressed, he realized. He remembered using that power during his fight with Instructor. If he used it again, he could defeat the flying demonic blood lion. The energy continued to tempt him, slowly seeping into his body through his mouth. He could feel it trying to control him. If I close my eyes, this terrifying power will take over, he thought. Warren struggled internally, gritting his teeth to prevent the energy from fully invading him. He opened his eyes wide and questioned whether he truly needed power he couldn't control. Determined, he fought against the invading force. I must hold on. I won't let this evil energy take over my body, he vowed. As the aura continued to push against him, Warren shouted at it to be silent. He gathered all his strength and declared, "This body is mine. I am its master, not you. You're just a ghost from the past." Warren promised to protect those he cared about with his own strength. In that instant, the red energy vanished completely, and he regained full control over his body. Without wasting any more time, he focused on his legs and propelled himself toward the battlefield, where his companions were still struggling against the terrifying old man. Just in time, Warren appeared and used the red energy to sever the old man's arm. The old man's arm was cut off, and blood poured out uncontrollably. His face showed shock, unable to understand what had just happened. He quickly retreated, crying out in pain. The old man glared at Warren with hatred, but a second later, his eyes widened in shock. Surrounding Warren was a terrifying red energy that caught him off guard. He realized that this was the power of a demonic master. Stunned, the old man demanded to know how Warren possessed such energy. At that moment, the poison flared up again, causing the old man to clutch his mouth and cough up blood. Byung also turned to look at Warren, recognizing the energy from her previous fight with him. Meanwhile, Jungwook and Namwook returned, both wounded. Realizing he had arrived at the perfect moment, the four of them stood together, ready to face the old man. Warren encouraged them, saying that the flying demonic bloodlion was poisoned and had used his life essence some time ago. He would soon collapse. With a serious expression, Warren gave his first order as the heir of the clan, commanding them all to survive. The group's eyes burned with determination as they stared down the old man. Weakened by poison and the loss of his arm, the old man admitted, "I have faced many challenges in this land, but this situation is one I can't understand." Resolved to fight to the death, he declared that he would give up his own survival and use the last of his strength. His body began to glow with a purple aura. Despite not fully understanding how he gained such power, he sneered and said, "Struggle as much as you want." Facing this deadly foe, the group heightened their guard, fully prepared for a life-or-death battle. In the next moment, both sides charged at each other with all their strength and resolve. No one knew how long the battle would last or what the outcome would be. Elsewhere, a man angrily shouted at his subordinates for failing to find the old man. He and his group quickly moved through the forest, thinking that the old man would soon use his life essence. They arrived at the river near the forest, and when they emerged, the man was shocked by the sight before him. The clearing showed signs of a fierce battle, and he recognized traces of the Blood Lion's martial arts. He grew more alarmed. Just then, his subordinates called out, announcing that they had found the old man. The man rushed over and saw the old man's body lying on the ground, covered in fatal wounds, blood pooling around him. They concluded that he was dead. The man, dissatisfied, demanded to know the whereabouts of the flower. His subordinates hesitated, unable to answer, and his fury grew. Realizing they had no information about the flower, he roared, "If you can't find the flower, you will die." One of the subordinates nervously confirmed that the flower wasn't there. Enraged, the man drew his sword, prepared to kill the subordinate. The young man closed his eyes tightly, bracing for death. However, to his relief, the man did not follow through. Furious, the man sheathed his sword and began to contemplate who had killed the old man and taken the flower. Which fool fought the flying demonic blood lion and stole the demonic poison stone flower, he thought, his face flushed with rage. The scene transitions to a dense forest where a group of riders hastily flees on horseback. Jungwook laughs heartily, exclaiming his disbelief at their victory over the flying demonic blood lion. Byung, puzzled, questions what he means. Jungwook explains that if the lion had fallen even moments later, they would all have been killed. Reflecting on the encounter, Jungwook admits he still feels the danger of the situation, noting how those who survive such battles are considered strong. He remarks that the flying demonic blood lion, a powerful martial artist in Jianghu, understood its own mortality and fought with everything it had. As they ride, Warren awakens, coughing blood, prompting Byung to ask if he's alright. Warren assures him he's fine, though weary, and comments that their battle with the lion was anything but easy. Holding a strange flower with an ominous purple aura from his robe, he vows to protect his family and clan no matter the cost. However, he acknowledges the path ahead will be dangerous and warns there may be days like today when their lives are at risk. Turning to Instructor Mo, he urges him and the two rising ghost blades to become stronger. Jungwook responds with a determined voice, though Namwook remains unconscious. Byung then addresses Warren, pressing him to explain something. Warren, confused, listens as she clarifies, asking about the ominous energy earlier. Jungwook interjects, stating that the aura felt unlike the energy of the Tianzhong clan and more akin to the flying demonic blood lion's sinister chi. Byung, now worried, asks if Warren has learned demonic arts. Internally, Warren debates whether to reveal his regression, fearing the consequences it might have on the future, and ultimately denies the accusation. He promises to explain everything later. Byung, still uneasy, argues that since they all risked their lives, Warren shouldn't keep secrets from them now. Riding fast to keep up, Warren aggravates his injuries, coughing blood again. Byung notices and urgently asks if he's okay. He smiles faintly, reassuring her and the group that they will be the first to know everything when the time is right. Though dissatisfied, Byung has no choice but to drop the matter. She signals the group to stop and rest, as Warren's condition worsens. As they dismount, Byung observes Warren's declining state and suggests seeking help from the Jaegal clan. Warren disagrees, reasoning that their pursuers, including Gochak and the Serpent Dragon sect, would only bring trouble to the Jaegal clan. Instead, he proposes heading to Mount Wudong, where he has heard of a skilled physician with the surname Heir. Byung questions the existence of such a physician on Mount Wudong, and Warren confirms the rumor. Meanwhile, on Mount Wudong, a white cat leaps gracefully through the forest, pursued by a young man calling it Bull. He pleads with the cat to stop, warning it of the mountain's dangers, but the cat continues running. It halts suddenly at a bush, intrigued by a strange noise emanating from within. As the young man finally catches up and grabs the cat, the sound draws his attention. Before he can investigate further, Warren's group emerges from the bushes, battered and bloodied from their journey. Warren, pale and with his face smeared in blood, cries out in relief at finding someone in the desolate mountain. The sight of his ghastly appearance terrifies the young man and the cat, leaving them trembling as a piercing scream echoes through the forest. Later, in a small straw house deep in the woods, Warren lies unconscious, receiving treatment. When he awakens suddenly, startled by a nightmare of the flying demonic blood lion, he finds his body intact and realizes he has been treated. Relieved, he concludes that they have indeed found the healer they sought. The boy Warren had encountered earlier in the mountains opened the door, noticing that Warren had regained consciousness. The boy explained that Warren had been seriously injured, so he brought him to their clinic, a small establishment run by his grandfather and himself. As Warren tried to rise from the bed, the boy urged him to remain still and take his medicine first. Curious, Warren asked if the boy's grandfather was named Hei Dukong. The boy confirmed this, surprising Warren, who realized that this boy was Ha Kielryung. In turn, Kielryung was startled that Warren knew his name. Warren thought to himself that he had finally found the reason for his journey to Mount Wudong, even using the Jaegal clan as an excuse. This child was the key to completing the Tianzhong clan's unstable martial arts. More importantly, he was destined to become the future strongest man under the heavens, the one supreme Kielryung. Warren recalled how, before his regression, a battle of unprecedented scale had erupted over a martial arts tome. The conflict involved not only the unorthodox and demon clans but also the 5 great clans. The tome introduced a revolutionary concept, the coexistence of good and evil within a human. When balanced, this duality could produce power far beyond ordinary limits. This philosophy, left behind by Zhang Sanfeng, the progenitor of the Wudong sect, was detailed in the Yin-Yang Depth Heaven tome. In his past life, Kielryung's family had stumbled upon this tome by chance while foraging for medicinal herbs, which allowed Kielryung to ascend as the strongest man under the heavens. Warren knew that obtaining this tome could help fulfill his family's dreams. As Warren pondered, he watched Kielryung diligently prepare medicine. A fly landed on the boy's cheek, and with lightning-fast reflexes, he caught it in his hand. This casual display of speed surprised Warren, revealing that Kielryung had also been trained in martial arts. However, the boy merely smiled modestly, mentioning that his grandfather had taught him. Despite Kielryung's young age, his skill left Warren astonished. At that moment, an elderly man with white hair and a kind smile entered the room, recognizing that Warren had awoken. This was Hei Dukong, Kielryung's grandfather. After some time, Warren, nearly fully recovered, stepped into the yard, where his companions had also recuperated. Together, Warren and his 3 subordinates bowed deeply to Dukong in gratitude. Introducing himself as Warren of the Hanan Tianzhong clan, he sincerely thanked the healer for his aid. Dukong waved off the thanks, insisting it was his duty. However, he then asked why someone from the Hanan Tianzhong clan was in this region. This question momentarily froze the group. Thinking quickly, Warren replied with a smile that he had come to gather ginseng. Dukong raised an eyebrow, commenting that while they had some medicinal herbs, ginseng was rare and difficult to find. He inquired further, asking why they needed ginseng. Facing Dukong's probing gaze, Warren appeared briefly flustered but quickly adopted a sorrowful expression. Tears welling in his eyes, he fabricated a dramatic story. He explained that his mother had fallen gravely ill and that his parents, who had cared for him despite his frail health as a child, were the reason he could leave the clan and explore the world. His voice grew more emotional as he claimed he had received a message about his mother's condition and learned that ginseng could save her. As he spoke, he began crying louder, wiping away tears of supposed filial affection. Byung, standing behind him, marveled at his acting, though she couldn't help but recall how healthy Warren's mother had been when they left. She silently wondered why their young clan leader would resort to such an elaborate lie. To their astonishment, Dukong was deeply moved by Warren's performance. Overcome with emotion, he praised Warren as a model of filial piety and declared that he was touched by the young man's devotion to his parents. With tears streaming down his own face, Dukgong rushed off, announcing that they must find wild ginseng immediately. Warren, satisfied with his success, smiled as his three companions stood frozen in disbelief at the scene they had just witnessed. The scene shifted to the mountains, where Byong, drenched in sweat and breathing heavily, was astonished to realize that Warren's search for ginseng was serious. She turned to look at him and saw him desperately scouring the area. Noticing Byong slowing down, Warren reminded her firmly to keep searching and not just stand idly. His gaze was resolute as he mentioned needing to find the yin-yang depth but quickly corrected himself, substituting it with ginseng for his mother. Seeing the determination on his face, the three subordinates resumed their search with equal diligence. By the time the sun began to set behind the mountains, Dukgong, exhausted from a full day of searching, announced they would have to stop for the day. The group, weary and covered in dirt and plants, returned to Dukgong's house. Wiping his sweat, Warren thought to himself that knowing the future didn't guarantee achieving everything easily. Feeling the weight of his task, he lamented how difficult it was proving to be. Dukgong turned to Warren, assuring him that he would send the ginseng to his location once he found some, asking where Warren was staying. Remembering that Warren mentioned being from the Tianzhong clan of Henan, Dukgong inquired if he should send it there. Warren clasped his hands, thanked Dukgong, and agreed, then gazed toward the setting sun. Suddenly, he apologized, expressing his desire to stay a few more days to continue searching for ginseng and asking if he could remain at the house. Later, inside the straw house, Warren meditated, his body surrounded by a menacing red and black aura. He thought about searching the places Dukgong frequented, confident he would find clues related to the tone there. What a relief it was, he mused, knowing the right leads. Without them, he wasn't sure how long it would take. He paused his practice and stepped outside, coincidentally meeting Dukgong. Bowing in greeting, the two sat together in front of the house. Dukgong asked if Warren wanted to hike with him, but Warren politely declined, stating he would continue searching on his own. Dukgong smiled lightly, saying he could do as he wished, and the atmosphere turned quiet. Breaking the silence, Warren asked about Kyeolryung's whereabouts. At that moment, Kyeolryung appeared holding a white cat, but his expression was filled with fear. Alarmed, Dukgong asked if something had happened, wondering if he had encountered a tiger. Kyeolryung explained that he had been out hunting with Baekseal when some people tried to capture the cat, forcing him to flee. Dukgong, visibly worried, remarked that if martial artists climbing Mount Wudong had targeted Baekseal, it must mean they had realized the cat was a mystic animal. Suddenly, a group of people appeared, shouting that they had found their target. A girl in the group, around Kyeolryung's age, commented on how fast he had run. Addressing Kyeolryung, she asked if he owned the cat and suggested he sell it to her. Kyeolryung firmly refused, declaring that Baekseal was not for sale. Annoyed, the girl demanded an explanation and offered a handsome sum in exchange. Despite her insistence, Kyeolryung resolutely rejected the offer, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of Warren's subordinates, who watched the scene curiously. The two groups faced off as Kyeolryung shielded Baekseal behind him. Dukgong stepped forward, apologizing and explaining that Baekseal was like family and not something they could sell. The girl, speaking loftily, warned Dukgong that others would have taken the cat by force and told him to count himself lucky it was her making the offer. She urged him to hand over the cat. Watching her haughty behavior, Warren thought she was arrogant but also reminiscent of his former self. Stepping forward in front of Dukgong, he politely spoke, stating that it was wrong to demand something after it had been clearly refused. However, one of the girl's subordinates, wielding a sword, blocked Warren's path and arrogantly ordered him to step back, asking if he even knew who they were. Maintaining a calm expression, Warren inquired about their identity. The large man introduced himself as a member of the Jaegal clan, revealing that the girl was the youngest daughter of the clan head. Realizing this, Warren was surprised to deduce that she must be Jaegal Yohee, the younger sister of his fiancée, Jaegal Changyang. Warren figures out why a mere bodyguard was acting so bold. Instead of fighting, he greets them with respect, telling them that it's an honor to meet the lady of the Jaegal clan. This ugly one-chapter character wants some screen time, so he starts beefing with our chat, asking him where he is from. All of a sudden Jungwook barges into the scene, telling him that for a mere guard he is being too bold, since he is Noah. He bumps into his head, about to reveal their status. Warren tells him to stop and just says that they are visitors of Mount Wudong. As they come face to face, this little turd says that she does not wish to talk to someone that is not willing to reveal their affiliation. She moves on to Kyeolryung, telling him that he has two options. Getting close to him, she tells him that he can either take the money and hand over the cat, or she will take it from him by force. As she approaches the cat, our Chad calls him over, telling him that he will distract them for the time being, so he should just throw the cat in the air. Kyeolryung closes his eyes. Our Chad intrudes, telling her that there is a third option. Hearing this, she gets angry, which is clearly visible in her eyes. While she was distracted, he throws Bakesell on the air, telling it to run away. The cat is clearly shocked, seeing just what is happening. Following the orders, he instantly runs away. The girl gets pissed, cursing our Chad. In response, our Chad explains the third option, that if the cat runs away, all she has to do is catch it. If she does this, Kyeolryung will not be able to complain. As for her, she is having a hard time controlling her anger. She orders her minions to go capture the cat. Immediately they chase after him without wasting a second. Warren points in Kyeolryung, telling him that their plan has succeeded. In the evening, all these turds return, telling the mini turd that they have lost it. She barks, telling them that the warriors of her clan couldn't even catch a single cat. They tells her that by no means is it a normal cat, but undoubtedly a mystic animal. She tells them that she will go to the Wudong sect, so they will capture it and bring it back. Byang tells Warren that if she is the youngest daughter of the Jaegal clan, then she must be Jaegal Yohee. Because of her behavior, she is called the Jaegal witch, but oh, don't care, all I want is Byang and our Chad mingling together. However, one thing that stands out is that she is someone who has surpassed the other geniuses in her clan to become a vice division leader. So Warren suggests that it would be better for them to hide their identities for the time being, since they don't know how she will react. And there is something they still need to find on Mount Wudong. They are getting close to each other. Guess the author is feeding my delusional mind. Warren notices that Kyeolryung is very sad, so he approaches him and asks him if he is worried because of Bakesell. Top cheer him up. Our Chad tells him not to worry since our kitty is very fast. Looking from far, our waifu looks at the interaction and thinks that our Chad has really changed. At night, in return for helping him, Old Man brewed 2 huge jugs of wine that he brewed with medicinal herbs. They refuse, telling him that it's not needed, but steal the jugs, gulping the wine like starving dogs getting a juicy bone. Byang observes their behavior and leaves. As she continues her walk, something grabs her attention. Under the moonlit sky, our Chad is facing Kyeolryung. Observing them, she notices that Kyeolryung has a good stance, so he must have learned martial arts. As he charges towards our Chad, he remains calm, not making any unnecessary movements. As their sticks collide, Kyeolryung loses horribly, but Byang gets shocked to see just what has happened. Although it was a quick fight, she noticed that Warren had to use the azure bamboo sword on a mere branch to defend herself. Although many say geniuses grow in incredible speeds, this is extraordinary. In the morning, Warren wakes up to see the little turd in front of him. He notices that she doesn't have the cat and proceeds to say good morning to her. With a pissed look, she tells him that she will get the cat no matter what. Our Chad, with a straight face, asks her why she is not continuing the search. She tells him that she has duties to fulfill, however she will come to catch that cat again in the future. As she leaves, our bully tells her to take care. She turns around to ask our Chad which sect he is from. Warren tells her that he is from a small sect that she would never know about. With a frustrated look, she leaves the scene, and our Chad hopes that he would not run into her at the Jaegal clan. Moving to her, she is pissed because he is lying to her till the end. She is not dumb, because there is no way a small sect could have that much chi. Aside from our Chad, who has a huge chi pool, even his companion seems quite formidable. If she were to see Byang fight, she would probably die in shock. She orders her guards to investigate all of them and tell them to find out where they are from, even their family background and what martial arts they use. Hearing these words, everyone present barks, following the words of their master. At Mount Wudong, we see our Chad walking around the forest. He roams around until he finds a pond. Walking across, he reaches the top of Mount Wudong. Watching across, he sees the entire area. Thinking about it, he thinks that the sun sets and another day will pass. He thinks that he cannot stay at this place forever, and at this point he has given up. He meets his peers and tells them to listen to him carefully. He tells them that they will leave completely as soon as the preparations are complete. The turds think their muscles have been stiff for long. As for our waifu with Grace, she says that she will pack her things. As they go inside, our Chad sees them. From behind, someone is approaching him fast. It's Kyeolryung. He is asking our Chad for help. Our boy tells him to catch his breath since he ran continuously. Crying out loud, he tells out Chad that Baekseal must have gotten hurt, as he shows him his fur covered in blood. Wherein thinks it has gone too much since they have chased the cat continuously, it has now gotten injured. Kyeolryung elaborates that by this time Baekseal should have retuned, since he is nowhere to be seen, he must have gotten hurt. Our Chad was about to leave, but this is too much, so he grits his teeth and asks Kyeolryung where Baekseal's territory might be. Kyeolryung is confused for the first time, so Wherein asks him where he met Kitty for the first time. Hearing this out, he says that he knows what he means, so our Chad decides to help him out. He tells Kyeolryung that since Baekseal is like family to him, he will naturally help him out. Using his aerial arts, our Chad storms through the forest, not wasting a single minute. Kyeolryung points out the location and they reach a mountain. Looking down, Wherein is shocked that his hideout is all the way down there. Going down, they start calling for him until Kyeolryung cries, showing our Kitty's blood and fur. Looking at the signs, our Chad thinks that given the signs he must be very close. As they continue searching, calling for his name, our Chad assures him that the traces mean our Kitty is around here. So they should look a little longer, but when something grabs his attention, a huge boulder blocking the entrance. Getting close to the boulder and analyzing it, our Chad feels a breeze and thinks that there is an opening behind the boulder. He tries to flex and thinks of lifting the boulder. He tries using all his strength, but it won't budge. This is embarrassing to him, so he figures it out that he cannot move with the amount of chi he has. He thinks of getting the help of Baeon or the two muscle heads. Kyeolryung finds a hole, shocking our boy. To keep his pride, our Chad tells him that because of his efforts it made a crack. But Kyeolryung breaks his bubble, telling him that the crack has always been there. Hearing this, it shatters the little pride Wherein had left. Kyeolryung thinks that Baekseal might have passed through it. Since it is dangerous, our Chad goes in to check it out. After going inside, he is shocked that it's so spacious here. Moreover, it's amazing that there is such a large chamber behind this boulder. A sudden bright light appears. It is so bright that he cannot see anything, but after adjusting to it he can see a man. As the light fades away, he sees the symbol of Yin and Yang symbol. In a matter of seconds he finds out that the dead man is the sage Zhang Sanfeng. He cannot believe that he found out the Yin-Yang depth heaven tome in such a place. Wherein notices a trail of blood and sees Baekseal resting, all covered in blood. Our Chad is flabbergasted because he found the cat and even the Yin-Yang martial art. Outside, Kyeolryung is nervous, wishing their well-being. Kyeolryung hears a noise and the next second a head gets out. Seeing the head, he gets scared and slowly and steadily a figure comes out. As tears drips from Kyeolryung's eyes, he sees our Chad holding Kitty, shouting out his name loud and clear. This chapter is still not available on internet, so enjoy and drop a comment. Wherein hands Baekseal to Kyeolryung. Seeing his condition, he starts crying because he has no strength left. As he continues to cry, our Chad remains silent, turning around. He looks at the martial manual he discovered inside the cave. Now we move on to what happened inside the cave. After he discovered Baekseal, he grits his teeth in anger looking at his condition. He laughs at the situation and then moves on to Kitty, scolding him because Kyeolryung is very worried about him. After taking a close look, he has relived that it's not a serious injury, so it can easily be treated. Afterwards, he shifts his attention to the mediating figure. He thinks that Baekseal is probably raised by the martial master. He picks up his Kitty and tells him that he needs to get him treated first and then he can come look around this place. All of a sudden the figure starts radiating light again, the figure slowly starting to disappear. Seeing this, he rushes towards the figure to discover a martial art. Moving to the present, he looks at the martial manual, thinking to himself. He thinks it is fate that he followed Baekseal. If he didn't, he would never be able to discover this secret place. If this was in the past, he would never have the heart to help a child in dire. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. Thinking to himself that things have changed, expecting more things to change in the future. His sect was not destroyed and will instead become one of the strongest sect in Henan. Moreover, his family is living happily without any changes. So no matter what happens, he will make this happen. After some time, Kitty is all patched up. Kyeolryung continues to cry. His grandfather tells him that it was not a serious injury and it will heal very fast. Our Chad comes outside after delivering Kitty to its owner, just to find his raging waifu ready to beat him to a pulp. Telling him what took him so long as they have been waiting for too long. He apologizes to Byung, telling her that Bakeseal was injured, so he was anxious and went out to look for him. She tells him that he should at least let them know before taking action. He tells her that they can really leave now, since he found Kitty and got what he wanted. Byung with a straight face tells him that they are fully prepared, but she wants to know what he meant by getting what he wanted. Asking him if he really found the ginseng, turning around tells her that he didn't find the ginseng but something more important than it. She is baffled because it's hard to find anything more valuable than ginseng. He gets into his acting mode, glazing himself and telling them that he has gotten the future. Everyone present gets shocked by his reply as he takes him leave to get dressed. After getting dressed, he tells Old Man that he owes him a lot and it's time to take his leave. Kyeolryung asks him if he is really going to leave, wherein tells Kyeolryung that if he ever needs help or wants to find him. He takes out a sign telling him that if takes this and goes to Hanan, he can find our Chad and he will help him out in any way possible. Hearing this, kiddo gets shy as he nods his head. Warren turns around bidding them farewell. As he leaves, Old Man tells him that he has been nice to them, and they are just people who make a living by picking herbs. Yet not knowing who they are, our Chad still helped them. He asks him if there is a particular reason. Our Chad thinks to himself that at first it was because he wanted something, but as he spent more time with them he grew attached to Kyeolryung. Our Chad tells him one word, telling him that it's because he looks just like him. Hearing this response, the Old Man is stunned. As they see each other, if Kyeolryung tells our Chad to come and visit him soon. Byung asks him if he gave the jade emblem of the clan. Our Chad laughs, telling her that he has learned a lot from Kyeolryung, elaborating that he is more important than any pack. In a flashback, we see a young Manhwa introducing herself to our Chad, telling him that she will be serving him from now onwards. She reintroduces, shouting and begging him to take her in. Hearing this, he gets shocked and then laughs, allowing her to serve him. As the pack continues their journey, Byung asks our Chad what is it that is making him smile this much. Our Chad asks him if it looks like this. The Dumb Brothers tells our Chad if they are heading to the Jaegal clan. Byung shouts, asking him that they were supposed to go meet his fiancée, but he is just going to pass by not visiting the Jaegal clan. Our Chad with a calm tone tells her that it's not the right time to see his fiancée and visit the Jaegal family. Jungwook thinks it would be best to visit them and inform that our Chad has improved a lot. Suddenly the stench of blood surrounds the air, stunning all of them. As they march forward, the party see thousands of body. They are all lying in tomato sauce. Seeing this, our Chad gets pissed. But he composes himself, telling them to not get involved in others' fights, so they straight away head home. Warren turns his horse going the other way around, but he stops all of a sudden. Telling them that it seems like he cannot ignore the situation, because the dead body of one of them belongs to the Jaegal family. As the group rushes towards the sound, Byung can hear it clearly. After getting to a certain place, Warren tells them to leave their horses here and walk by foot. The brothers are ready, telling themselves that this is their second fight after the Blood Lion. Our Chad tells them that rather than going blindly, it's best they should look at the situation first. Jungwook thinks that it is a great idea, but then they come across a stockpile of corpses. Currently his sister-in-law and the guard is surrounded by mysterious people. He realizes that the person beside her is the young master of the Zhuge family. Warren didn't see him in Wudong, so he must have joined them later onwards. One of the masked figure with a snake mask orders his minions to attack. Hearing this, they charge towards them, but they get saved as an old man takes the blow. The old man falls to the ground and little Shawty gets scared, calling the man uncle. She is scared as fear is clearly visible in her eyes. Warren thinks that this is a tough situation, then he moves to his crew and asks them who the people wearing white are from. Byung has no idea, and so does Namwook, so he thinks to himself that the identities of them is still unknown. Remembering their ornaments like the mask and the white robe, he figures out that this is clearly the white-green division. That is said to be the most cruel and perfect in the future. This event occurs after a man named Duk Sang obtains a pill of life from the green blood viper, a mythical creature, and ascends to the divine realm. Subsequently, he assembles a group with the green blood viper as their symbol. However, he is perplexed by their attachment to the Jaegal clan. Warren believes that if he possessed any information about them, he could devise a solution. Upon witnessing the bloodbath, he becomes enraged, unable to control his fury. Our Chad thinks to himself that he's foolish for obtaining the Taiji department Heaven Tome and the Poison Stoneflower. He intends to return home to complete his family's martial arts and alter the future. His eyes turn red, likely due to the new martial arts he's using. Moving to the masked snake, the main leader charges towards our Shawty. As he leaps in the air to stab her, before she can react, a figure steps in, blocking the attack and injuring the attacker. Seeing our Chad, she's shocked. He reveals his identity, telling her he's the young master of the Yong clan. Hearing this, the man pauses for a moment before commanding his minion to kill them. They try to attack our Chad, but instantly, his squad blocks all their attacks. The Zhuge clan turd asks our Chad if he's truly Yong wearing, and he's heard that he's too unwell to even move around. Everyone starts talking, and our Chad tells them to keep quiet since now isn't a time for conversation. The kid wonders to himself how he's changed so much in a year. The snake turd asks our Chad who he is. Like a savage, he tells him they might be people who happen to pass by. The snake turd thinks for a moment and tells our Chad it doesn't matter and that they'll all die here. Warren is in a tough situation, and they can't win against them head-on. They don't have the numbers advantage over them, but the J-Gals can no longer fight. He needs to ensure everyone gets out of this alive. Byung tells our Chad she'll fight, but the turd angers our Chad. He tells him he was acting all confident, yet now he's gonna hide behind some woman. Hearing this, our Chad gets angry and tells him he'll fight him head-on. The man thinks they're all a bunch of young fools as our Chad charges towards him. Byung gets stopped by Namwook, who tells her that the old young masters are gone, so it's best to watch what he does. He charges towards the turd with anger, cursing him a man. Seeing this, he thinks he might not have truly changed. The man believes it's an easy fight as their swords collide. The man tells our Chad if this is what it takes to make him this mad. However, our Chad is incredibly focused on defeating him, closing the distance and successfully misbalancing the snake. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he lands a lethal swift blow, instantly cutting off one of his fingers. Seeing this, everyone is shocked, even the snake himself. Warren is furious because he wanted to cut off an arm, but he managed to minimize the damage sustained by swinging his arm around even with his vision obscured. However, he then smiles, thinking to himself that he has achieved his goal. Byung is so worried that she wants to rush over, but again, one of the brothers stops her, telling Byung to wait around. As our Chad comes face to face with the snake, he tells him that what he needs is a moment of advantage. From now on, it will be a game of luck. He stares him with a dominating look, shocking the snake by telling him to inform squad leader Duk Sang that he himself is from the Hidden Saint cult. From afar, Warren's companies are thinking to themselves. Junwook tells Byung that our Chad is probably saying something, but he cannot tell what he is saying. Byung figures out that he is using the sound transmission technique. Realizing this, she is shocked because it's not an easy skill to learn. Moreover, she cannot figure out when he managed to learn this. Moving to our Chad, he tells Snake Turd that if he tells him all this, he will forgive him, telling him to leave. The man grits his teeth in anger, telling him how can he know their squad leader's name, questioning who he is. Our Chad is in a tight spot because he is still doubting him despite the fact that he knows the name of their squad leader. Warren takes a second to think, but he does not have that luxury as man hold his sword, telling him to tell him everything clearly. Warren starts telling him that 5 years ago, when the Hidden Saint cult was eradicated by the 3 demonic heavens, he was one of the people present there. Warren asks the turd as he is not one of the people that are trying to revive the cult. Our Chad boldly declares that he is a man from the Hidden Saint cult. The turd gets closer to our Chad, ready to attack him, but stops the sword at our Chad's neck. Seeing this, his accomplices call for his safety. The man finds it hard to believe that our Chad, who is barely 20 years old, yet he knows the name of the squad leader, as well as about the Hidden Saint cult. The man finds it very hard to believe, but he will believe our Chad if he can answer just one of his questions, asking him which heaven of the Hidden Saint cult he belongs to. Hearing this, our Chad doesn't make an expression because currently the turd is testing him. According to what he knows from the future, the Hidden Saint cult right now is a union of 3 groups rather than a single unified group. The Sun Saint cult, which pursues power over anything else. Then there is the Moon Saint cult, which pursues religion, and the Hidden Saint cult, which mediates the group. However, it is not known which group the Green Blood Viper belongs to. It would not be likely for the Hidden Saint cult and the Moon Saint cult to make an assassin organization. So it makes more sense if the Sun Saint cult did such a thing. But he cannot cancel out the possibility that the Moon Saint cult or the Hidden Saint cult cannot create one. This is all a gamble, but it is all he has always done, which is best to put his money on which is the most likely bet. With a bold face, Archad tells him that he is from the Sun Saint cult. The man remains quiet, then orders his crew to take their leave. After they leave, Archad remains quiet, then blood starts gushing out from his mouth. It was caused by an internal injury from the strike earlier. As Byong rushes towards him, his consciousness starts to fade. Later that day at the evening, Warren wakes up from his sleep, as he overhears people telling everyone to hurry up their work. Everyone is done cleaning the body while Archad observes without spilling anything. That's when he sees his sister-in-law worrying about something, then she proceeds to hand Archad something. She tells him that this is her clan's healing medicine that will heal his internal injuries. Archad tells him that it is fine since she didn't expect something in return. She remains quiet, then she turns around telling Archad if he is going to consume it after she begs him. As she gets further away with a low tone, she thanks him. Seeing this, Archad gets shocked, then he smiles silently. Byong gets close to Archad and tells him that she didn't know our little shawty had a cute side to her. She explains that the medicine is a rare medicine given to the direct lineage of the Jaegal clan. She didn't expect that he would give it to him. Warren tells her to make her presence more obvious, telling her that he was scared. Instead of listening to her, she shouts at him, telling him that she was scared. He thought that he was completely out of her mind when he ran to the assassins. With a nervous tone, he tells her that he was just trying to save everyone. She gets close to him, putting her head on his shoulder, asking Warren why he changed so much. Warren gets shocked as she tells him that in just a few months ago, he resented the world and himself. He lived every day like hell, and that was the kind of person she was aware of. But today he risked his life for everyone. She is so impressed and proud of him. But she is curious why she is pushing himself to do all this. As memories of the past and the recent events cloud his mind, he tells her that he is just doing his best. After cleaning the bodies and given respect to them, the party, now bigger, set forth guarding a carriage. As Warren and the Zhuge clan heir lead the crowd, he thanks Archad for accompanying them to the clan. Since currently they lack people with the ability to fight. If the assassins were to strike again, they would be in serious trouble. Warren tells Hai that it is not a big deal since he is heading to the Jaegal clan himself. The man laughs, telling him if he is going there to meet Qianyang, his fiancée. Hearing this, little shawty opens the carriage's window, asking Archad why he likes her so much. Asking if it is because she is very strong. Or because she is extremely beautiful. Hearing this, Warren remains quiet. As for Byong, she clearly seems pissed. Warren changes the conversation, asking the man if he can answer something for him. The man tells him to ask him right away. So Archad without a doubt asks him why the assassins were attacking the Jaegal clan. Hearing this, both the shawty and the man get shocked, with fear clearly visible in their eyes. Warren further tells them that the Jaegal clan is undoubtedly one of the largest clan, and this place is the Jaegal clan's front yard. As Archad continues to wonder, Shawty tells him that it was just a coincidence, but the man stops her, telling her that it is a coincidence. Since he saved their lives, he deserves to know the real reason. They are not entirely sure, but the assassins might be trying to kidnap Yohi. Hearing this, she remains quiet. As for Warren, he asks her what this has to do with her. The man tells Archad when they killed the guards there was no hesitation, but when it comes to Yohi they didn't harm her in any way. But one thing that is clear is that there is a group bearing bad intentions against their clan. Warren thinks that if they want to kidnap her, there must be something they want in return. The man remains quiet because he is aware that someone has been targeting their clan. But this incident crossed all boundaries. With a serious tone, he wonders if this is because an information unknown to us was leaked. As soon as they reach the Jaegal clan, bustling noises as they enter the Jaegal clan. As they enter the main residences, Archad thinks to himself that after a very long time he is going to see her again, his fiancée Qianyang. In his past life, the marriage between Qianyang and Archad had been arranged before their birth. But they were living two completely different lives. He was someone who was always ill and she was the one who chased martial arts. As such, they slowly grew further and further away from her. Until finally something happened, but before he could recall this, a voice grabs his attention telling our Chad to go and meet the clan leader. Warren tells his group to rest and soon he will join them. After entering the main hall, our Chad introduces himself, but before he could finish, the leader rushes towards him and starts laughing. He is really shocked to see what is going on. He is very happy because our Chad looks happy, which is the polar opposite of the last time he saw him. This man is the leader of the Jagal clan, the heaven-ruling sword Jagal Chiak. It has been a long time and he asks how our Chad's father is doing. Warren tells him that his family is doing great and he has sent his regards. The leader then inspects our Chad's body, telling him that he has great physique, so he must be training in martial art. He, with a smirk on his face, tells our Chad seeing his current self, his daughter will be very happy. Our Chad brushes off his question, as old man tells him that he has taken too much of his time. He says that he shouldn't have taken this much time considering there is someone waiting for him. As our Chad was taking his leave, the leader tells our Chad they have another guest who has arrived, and since they are of similar age it might not be a bad idea to have a conversation. Warren says that he will keep this in mind. As he takes his leave, the atmosphere of the room turns dark. Old man gets serious, asking the man what had happened. As Warren leaves the main hall, he wonders that he has met the clan leader and all that is left is to meet his fiancée. As he approaches the yard, he notices two men conversing. The man insists on meeting someone, but the guard denies him entry. Taking a closer look, the man instantly recognizes our Chad. This turd turns to our Chad and makes a look as if he is superior to our Chad. The man leads his hand, introducing himself as someone from the Songchun clan. As if we care, we will call him Minion. Warren, after taking another look, figures out that he is the guest. Our Chad asks him if he is here to see Chong Young. As expected, the man says he arrived here first. As our Chad grips his hands, he tells him that he has heard many things about his clan. Then moves on to telling him that he is here to meet the lady that is fiancée even before he was born. Hearing this, the man gets poised, telling our Chad that he has heard news that he has rather been sick. Before he could finish, a man asks them if they are here to meet Chong Young, and she is probably in the courtyard right now. As they were approaching the courtyard, a sword flies past them that they barely manage to dodge. Warren gets shocked when he sees her facing a guard. The man loses the fight and she sheathes her sword, finding it extremely boring, looking aloof. This concludes this part. Make sure to like and subscribe for another part.